Hi, I'm Sherry. Welcome back to Dreams Are Seeds. Today's original intro footage was unfortunately lost, but I still wanted to bring you along and show you how I'm transplanting my tomatoes into straw bales. So let's get into it. This is my potting mix. Now I do see some fungi, like some little shrooms growing on the bales. That's usually good. Usually if you find mushrooms in your garden beds, I haven't had them in containers before, but I've had them growing on my beds. And fungi is usually a sign that your soil is healthy and that it's growing healthy bacteria that will feed your plants. I don't know. I only have one straw bale that has mushrooms growing on it. I'm just gonna trust the process. So I watched a couple videos, and basically I just need to scoop some hay out and make room for my transplant, and then fill that hole up with a little bit of potting mix to just give this plant a chance to get used to another substrate before it goes into the hay. It's straw. It's not hay. I just really love that word, don't I? Hay. Anyway, your straw. Straw is a good one. I have a couple of hay bales. Hay. Because I am making this little experiment to see which one works better for me. And so far, the hay has a bunch of grass seeds sprouting. And I think I may have one little grass coming up on the straw bale. So far as weeds go, hay is full of weeds and straw is basically weed free. So, food for thought. I feel bad about hurting this mushroom. Sorry. This part can be a bit of a hassle, but be patient, trust the process, and when I'm done transplanting, I'm gonna use this rotting straw as mulch. As a part of the conditioning process, you're supposed to fertilize with an all-purpose fertilizer. You can actually see it, like these dark bits. That's my fertilizer. I usually put an egg under my tomatoes, but these bales have what has been recommended to me as far as fertilizing requirements, and this is supposed to be enough for my plants. But since I'm not adding my eggs, and I fear for my tomatoes, just because I've never done this before, I'm adding an extra half a cup organic fertilizer under the potting mix that I'm gonna use to transplant my tomatoes. So I think it's easier if I just show you. So here's a full cup of my pelletized fertilizer. This is a local organic product, and wherever you're growing, I just recommend that you find what works best for you, what is cheaper and works best for you. I've bought some fertilizer before. It's not really fertilizer, it's a soil supercharger that M.I. Gardner makes at the M.I. Gardner store. But I personally found that even though the product is wonderful and it works perfectly, it was too expensive for me. It was almost as expensive to pay for shipping as buying the product. So that's a no for me. It's not an option for me because I want to grow all the tomatoes. It may be a good option if I only wanted to grow one or two tomatoes, but it adds up and it has to be convenient for me. So this is what I'm using today. I recommend that you use whatever suits your growing conditions and your budget as best as possible. So, enough chit chat. I'm just gonna grab half of this cup and just let it drop down in there. A little more. And this is just so that my tomatoes can have a little extra food for making tomatoes. Grab your potting mix, and it's very important that this is not just compost and not just soil. I mean, the potting mix has elements added to it that help with drainage and fertilization, so don't use just anything. Use a potting mix. So I put a little potting mix in there, and then I just stab it with my shovel a couple of times just to make sure that, that it's really going in there. And then I make a little space for my plant. I check the space to see if I can plant it as deep as possible. This is a Kellogg's Breakfast tomato. I hope I don't lose you, little label. Okay, so use some more potting mix. Looks a little dry, but I'll water this really well as soon as we're done, so it doesn't really matter. Although, if possible, whenever you're transplanting anything, do it onto wet soil or wet substrate or wet compost or whatever you're using, because this looks a little dry. It will stunt your plant less if your soil or your substrate or whatever you're using is wet. I just want to cover this tomato up as much as possible because I know that wherever the stem touches the soil, it'll grow roots. Then I'll just grab my straw that I scooped out and use it to mulch the soil. One down, one to go. I really, really, really want to stuff 3 tomatoes into each of these bales. These are 2 bales, by the way. It's this one and there's that one. But I read that it's better if you're growing tomatoes in straw bales to plant just 2 tomatoes per bale. It's just being really hard for me not to push that limit. I actually did push it in my hay bales just to see what would happen. I mean, those tomatoes are probably going to compete for space and nutrients at some time, but it's just so hard for me to control myself when I have so many tomatoes. Anyways, I'm gonna respect the rules that I found and just do 2 plants per bale. As hard as it is for me, I will be planting some other stuff in the bales with the tomatoes on the sides, like some flowers, maybe some herbs, but definitely control yourself and don't plant more than 2 tomatoes per bale. And that's it. That's the most challenging part of the whole process for me. Once you scoop some out, the rest starts coming out a lot easier. Extra, half a cup of fertilizer. Anyways, triple crop. Let's hope you come out without a fight. Other recommendation if you're transplanting tomatoes is to make sure they're nice and wet when you're going to transplant them so they don't crumble in your hands. And fill that up with your potting mix. Press down gently just to get rid of any air pockets. And the mulch. Tomato, I love you. So that's the way I'm transplanting my tomatoes into these straw bales. I'm still working on a video on how to transplant tomatoes into containers for you. So we still have another little tomato transplanting episode coming up. I'm gonna go get a tomato to finish this video. I'm a little covered in potting mix, but if you've been here before, you know that's never stopped me. So worth it. So, that's it for today. I hope you found this video helpful or useful. It's lovely having you here. It always is. And hopefully, I'll see you on the next one. 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 Bye. Okay. Woo! Almost lost it. Hurry up. I've done all I can to help. Give me a ton of tomatoes. Yeah. Well, at least somebody is enjoying the fact that we're tearing out the old garden. Aren't you, Benita?